Michelle, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the third episode or third segment of the new MMA headlines feature that we're doing. And who better to do it with than yourself? So I'm very happy that you agreed to join me, and let's talk about some headlines.
Yeah, it's good to see your face. I was just trying to get Josh to come up here because he's really good at talking about all those things too. But he's like, no, 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 they don't want to see my face. They want to see your face.
Always we want to see Josh. You kidding? How's everybody doing? How's the family?
We're good. We're just super busy. It never slows down.
Yeah.
Araya has gymnastics, and she's competing now. So we're taking her and competing with her, training, trying to go and visit sponsors, and I don't know if I told you, but we got a taco shop.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we opened up a taco shop, and then we're working on opening two more restaurants and training, hoping to secure a fight for May.
Okay, cool.
And then some really, really exciting news coming up after that. So
It'll break right after the podcast. Like, we'll post the podcast, and then it'll be breaking news. Michelle Waterson to fight such and such, and then we'll be like, and then we'll post it right before. It always happens. The story of my life with the podcast. But that's awesome news. That's good stuff. And you're still training. Everything's good. You're training hard, I guess, now, because obviously May is next month, so you got to be ready for that.
yeah, no, we're training hard. And it's just like you said, we just got to be ready. So we have been training. We've just been also traveling. So, but
Yeah.
it's good because we went to the On It Academy out there, and they got some good jujitsu and Muay Thai. So we didn't fall behind on any of that.
Yeah. It's amazing how much time not time you have, but how much time you put into doing stuff, because to be so busy as you say you are right now with all this other stuff, you always do so much on social media. Like, you're always, like, I always see you doing so much stuff, like so many different things. And I just saw you dancing with Holly Holm and Jon Jones and all this stuff. So it's like you're always doing things. So it's like it seems like you're from morning till night, you're just doing something, and then you must get a very small amount of sleep, and then you just start over again.
I think for me, what helps is that I stopped carrying. I mean, obviously, I took the time to freshen up a little bit. I just got done with the training session, but I stopped caring how I look, and I'm just like, just
Nice.
sharing candid moments when I can, and I think that's important, to just be as genuine as I can with the people that decide to follow.
Do you have an OnlyFans account?
No, I do not. Do you?
No, but they're asking me to do one, and Diego has one, and a lot of other fighters have them, and apparently a lot of other people. Because I guess it started out with more females doing other things, but now it's like everyone, and it's like becoming the new social media thing, and they're getting a lot of subscribers and making a lot of money. Like, even like Diego and other people, it's crazy, and it's just showing more intimate parts of your life, kind of.
Which Diego?
Sanchez. I just had him on the podcast a while back, and he was saying how he was on there doing all this other stuff, which I don't understand. But it was like just showing kind of like what you were saying, like you do vlogging and stuff like that. It would be along the lines of that, like people that want to get to know you a little bit more than social media, like your personal life, your home life, your family life, certain things, maybe the dancing stuff, whatever the case. And I guess it's like a very cohesive group of people that aren't like, anonymous haters and judgers and leaving bad comments. It's more everyone has to have a true account, and then I guess you get paid like by however many people like follow you and stuff. So you actually get paid back for your following and how well you entertain whoever, the viewers are. So a lot of people's doing it. They're hitting me up, and I don't know why, but like, yeah. So I don't, it seems like a lot of people's doing it for some reason. So I had to ask, because you do so much on social media.
Yeah, I know. And I guess I just, from what I understood, it was kind of like a fans only. It was kind of like I don't know, like from the people that I've known that have done it, where they were like, doing things like
Yeah,
like I don't know how else to explain
I
it. It's
get
like
what you're saying.
things for the camera, and then they
Yeah.
were getting paid for it, and that's just kind of like what I had understood about what that was. You know what I mean? But maybe they are trying to go a different direction and really build kind of that subscription base. So definitely might be something that I look into. It's just there's so much to
Yeah, of course.
everything going on. There's so much that's it's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter.
Clubhouse
There's just
now.
the list goes on. Like you said, you're doing a podcast now, and so for me, the biggest thing that I'm really trying to work on is the TikTok and the YouTube. And then Josh and I are thinking about getting a podcast up and doing something like once a week where we just sit down and talk
Nice.
about kind of, some of the current events, maybe some things that are on our minds, how we, the biggest thing that what we wanted to do was, how we take things in from the fight world and translate it into the everyday world.
Right.
So we thought that might be a fun podcast to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and yeah, no, definitely a lot of people are doing OnlyFans that definitely aren't just females and doing crazy stuff. So, yeah, look into that, and then it's a way to get paid, just like YouTube. No, YouTube's the only way to get paid now for your content. Kind of, Instagram and these other Twitter, they don't pay you. So this is kind of another outlet to actually make money where you get paid for your services. You're not ripping anyone off. You're just getting paid for how much you're entertaining people. But anyway, I'm not a salesman for the company. I don't even have an OnlyFans account, but. Anyway, we'll get to the news. We'll get to the headlines. And first, I wanted to ask you, this kind of broke overnight, and I'll ask you some different questions. I know you're friends with Dana, you're friends with Jon, you train with Jon. I don't want to get too deep on sides because I don't think it matters, but do you think that Jon Jones asking for what he's wanting at Dana and the back and forth battle, should that be a headline news, or should that just be something they handle? Like, I think the media, and this is a reason why I don't like a lot of the mainstream MMA, I shouldn't say mainstream, but just some of the MMA media, is they sensationalize this stuff, and all it does is it harms either the UFC, which is how they make their money by having the UFC put events on, or they harm the fighters. And I think when they put a post out like they did last night, MMAfighting.com, somewhere along the lines of Jon Jones wanting $50 million, says coach, like his coach says he wants $50 million. I think it was Winkle John did an interview, and the headline was, because he said something about Floyd Mayweather getting $100 million, he thinks Jon Jones should get 50. Now, that was the headline. Now, I think the majority of people will go against the UFC on that and say he should get the 50 million, but there's going to be a lot of people that's going to hate Jon, even though Jon had nothing to do with it, thinking, that's a lot of money and why it's kind of selfish. And it's just like, I think the media, they're just doing whatever they can. And the one entity that hasn't ever paid fighters or Winkle John or the UFC or anybody for any of these headlines that they're making money on is the actual media outlets that are reporting that people are getting ripped off one way or another. And so I just don't think it should be headlines, in my opinion. And I think it's just business. And I think it's good for these fighters to have to get versed in business and have to battle companies, especially as big as UFC and Dana, and have to learn business, because they're going to have to do it when they get out of fighting anyway. So the more they do it now and have to go back and forth and negotiate and try to get what they want, when the UFC is trying to get what they want, I think it's good for them.
Mm-hmm. I think the media does a really good job at trying to find things that get people, intrigued, and a lot of times it's it's drama and it's the stuff that's controversial, and to them I do think that the money has always been very controversial for MMA athletes, because when you look at the amount of sacrifice an MMA athlete goes through versus any other athlete, and maybe I'm biased because I'm an MMA athlete.
Yeah, of course.
But it's not just a seasonal sport. It's something that you do all year round, and you have you don't just have a boxing coach. You have a boxing coach. You have a grappling coach. Then you have a cage coach, then you have a therapist, and then you have a nutritionist, and then you have a manager, and then all these things. And so when it comes down to the money, by the time you've done paid out everybody, you still have to pay taxes on all of that. You're left with pennies, and it is real frustrating. And I think the media just sympathizes for the fighter in that sense. I do agree with you when I think it's important for the fighter to be able to stand their ground and negotiate. But the fighters, they're fighters for a reason, because that's what they do. They're not financially equipped or mentally equipped with the financial know-how to negotiate these contracts. And a lot of times, the numbers are skewed because they don't want them to know who has what leverage, so that you can, negotiate properly. And I don't know, you were a fighter. How do you feel about how many years you fought versus the amount of money you made?
See, the thing is, the difference is now I'm in business, and I've been in business since I was in the UFC. So I understand it from a different perspective. Like in business, like we both know Dana. We know he's a giving person. We know he also stands for and fights for what he believes in, and we know that he's running a business at the end of the day. And the thing is, this is why this article bothered me, is because the headline said $50 million. Now that's putting it in the fans' eyes that he should make $50 million, and if he makes anything less than that, it's the UFC's fault. That's not the case. That was based on Floyd Mayweather. Now Winklejohn isn't an expert on how fights. Or how much fighters should get paid from the structure of the deals and the promotion aspect. None of us are, right? The promoters know that stuff, the business side. But what we do know is Mayweather has the best financial arrangement of any sports athlete in the history of sports athletes. Like, he has an entire business built around himself. He is the promoter. He is the fighter. He is the machine. He is the company. He has every single thing. So Floyd Mayweather takes care of Floyd Mayweather. He doesn't take care of 600 other fighters. He doesn't take care of doing deals and doing marketing and building up machines and spending the amount of money that the UFC does so that other people like yourself can make a living off fighting as well. Be it that you make enough or don't make enough. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's a different situation. Floyd Mayweather takes care of Floyd Mayweather, and so he can keep all of the money. And when you go to a Floyd Mayweather fight and you buy a drink in the audience at the concession stand, he's getting a piece of that. He's getting a piece of every single TV deal, every single network deal, and so you can't compare that to something like this. And you throw that number out there, and then that makes the fans think, oh wow, that's a lot of money, and either he deserves it, or he's being greedy and doesn't deserve it, because you got Derek Lewis saying, hell, for $8 million, I'll fight all day, so he'll probably fight for $5 million or whatever the case. So I think it causes negative vibes for everyone, and they don't care. That's the thing. They're just trying to get views. They're just trying to make advertising dollars, and that's what bothers me. But from a business, to go back to your question, from a business perspective, I'm around contracts and running business. I have 50 employees here. I'm involved in other businesses, and I've sold other businesses and built them in the past. And when you sign a contract, for the fans that are watching this, and just so you know, when you're in business and you sign a contract, it's a contract. Like, it would be impossible for me to think, if I had a contract with somebody and it was a set amount of work that I had to do for them or a commitment to them, that I can just at any time say, I'm going to get this contract changed, and I want you to pay me more money, and I'm going to do the same job that I agreed to do and signed to do. It is almost a 0% chance that's going to happen unless I have leverage on my side. I have something on my side that's going to make that person have more value in order to give me more money. So
what do you think the leverage is? The leverage is the biggest fight in MMA history, Jon Jones versus Ngannou.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
isn't it is that some leverage,
to ask for that much money? I think it is. And I don't know, I don't know the numbers that the UFC is bringing in, but so what you're saying basically is, if Jon wants that fight, he needs to go off and build his own promotion and tell Ngannou to break ties with the UFC and come off and do just this one-off fight with him and Ngannou with their own promotion and do it that way?
Absolutely. That is the only way he will make Floyd Mayweather money. If he is the promoter, the entire company, the entire business is built around him. He promotes the entire thing and sets everything up with his team. He will 100% make the most amount of money, and it will come down to the pay-per-view buys, how much the fight sells, and he will get the biggest chunk of it 100%. That's exactly what I'm saying. But that's not realistic, because he doesn't have that team around him, and neither does any other athlete on the planet, which is what separates Floyd Mayweather from everybody else. Why he is so rich and makes so much money, because he's the boss of everything when he fights, and he pays the fighter that he fights enough to get the fight done and make the big fights. But what I am saying is, I'm not saying Jon doesn't deserve the money or does. I think it's good that they're going back and forth, and I think it's great that he's asking for as much as he can. But the leverage is what comes into play, and I think not having the belt and not having as much leverage, other than the fact that people want to see this fight, takes away from it. Because if it gets to a point where Dana doesn't agree with the amount of money, Dana's going to say no and get Derek Lewis, and they're going to put the fight together, boost Derek Lewis like crazy on social media, and build him to like they did with Masvidal, like they did with all these other guys, to build him up to a superstar level, and they'll make a fight. Now, they won't make as much as Jon Jones and Francis, 100%, but they won't pay as much either for it. So I think the play here, if it was me, would be to not go to the media so that it becomes negative for everyone. Handle the situation with Dana, make the most amount of money that me and my team can possibly squeeze out of Dana, take the fight, beat Ngannou, take the heavyweight belt, and now you have the leverage. Now you just beat one of the scariest guys in the division. You have the belt. Now you have leverage.
Ngannou, there's nobody. outside of it, that's the, you know what I mean? Like outside, like once he's already beat him, that's it. Then there's nobody else to fight. Like he's the top of the top.
I'm just saying how he'll get the most money. I don't see him getting as much as he's wanting, but I think he'll make enough to be happy, honestly. I think they'll come to a reasonable decision and something will happen. Everybody wants to see the fight. And like I said, I agree with the fact that they're having this battle because Jon, and I'm not saying Jon's a bad business person, but I'm saying he's getting business experience, and he can't be a very experienced business person because he's putting all of his time into fighting. Like every fighter, you can't do both. You know, like I'm all business now, you know, like, so it's like I'm learning more and more every day about business. But when I was a fighter, it was all fighting, and I had to have advisors and work as much as I could on business. So I learned very slowly. I think this is great for him to get that experience. And he's dealing with such a big company, a multi-billion-dollar company, such a big boss like Dana. I think it's good experience for him to try to work on, you know, learning about business, learning about negotiations. And it's interesting to see what's going to happen. So I guess the question just was, do you think it should be a headline, or do you think it should just be behind the scenes and we just find out how the fight gets happened?
I don't know how else to say it except for that. I don't think that what the media is talking about, I don't think they know everything. I think they're just kind of speculating, you know what I mean? Because the real conversations are happening behind doors.
Absolutely.
And the important conversations are happening behind doors and not being spoken to the media about. And so I just think that the media kind of caught a bit of it and they're just trying to run with it.
And I do want to say I've said things in the past where I don't agree with Jon Jones, and I just speak my mind. I'm very honest, but I will say, not just because you're friends and you train with him, you know, I do hope he gets the fight. I want to see it, and I think he is not scared 100%. I do not believe the people that are saying that he's afraid to fight Francis Ngannou. I don't think that man's afraid to fight anybody, and anybody that says that is ridiculous. This is a man who's never been beat. He's fought everybody. He's had tough fights. Where I'm sure when he's had those close fights that he had, which, I mean, like I said, when you get guys that are undefeated, you've shown up sick, you've shown up injured, you've shown up with stress and all these things and had to go out there and fight. And maybe you took a loss because of it and you couldn't say anything. Or maybe you had a win, but it was hard. It was really, really hard to get that win. For him to be undefeated for so long, no matter how hard some of those fights are, he's had to show up sick and get wins. He's had to show up injured and get wins. He's had to show up with stress in his life, you know, maybe a family death or a relationship problem and get wins. That says a lot to me. Like guys like Khabib, guys like Jon Jones that are on these huge undefeated streaks, like the old Vanderlei and the old Anderson Silva back in those days. So I definitely don't think he's afraid of the fight. I definitely think he's ready. The guy's training like an animal, and I am very looking forward to seeing it. I'm curious to see how it comes out and how everything works out as far as the fight gets made.
Yeah, I mean, it would be awesome if he could break some records as far as, you know, a fighter's purse for the UFC. And, you know, if he fights for it, it just makes it better for all the rest of us. I would agree with you in the sense that the difference between boxing pay and MMA pay is a lot of times like the top tier in boxing, it's only the top tier boxers that get paid ridiculous amounts of money. You know, I would say like the 1% only, really probably a handful of people, like a dozen, you know, just the people that everybody knows. And then outside of that, they're not getting paid as well. When you look at MMA, or I should probably say the UFC, I think first of all, the UFC does an amazing job at stacking the cards. And when you tune into a UFC fight, you know all the fighters from top to bottom, and all the fighters across the board are getting paid more. Like if you kind of like on average, I guess is the best way to explain it. Would you agree with that?
I agree. No, I agree with you. And I'll just end it on this, and we'll get to another headline. You know, I'm the last person in the world to speak for the UFC and Dana and how they should handle their business. But I think, in my opinion, this is just my brain working, I think a resolution here to make this deal happen would be a gigantic win bonus. So I think, because if he beats Francis Ngannou, that's going to set up one of the greatest rematches in UFC history. You know what I mean? So either way, it's going to set up a big rematch. But if he beats Francis, for sure, you know, if it's a close fight or if it's a good fight. So there's an investment policy in there. And then, you know, if they pay him a set amount to show up, a fair amount to where he's comfortable with, but give him a lot more if he wins. Now, if Jon does what he says he's going to do, he'll make the money that he wants. And if he doesn't, then he won't. And then the UFC, that'll also be leverage for the UFC to say, if you win this fight, it'll set up another fight that gives us a little bit more to invest in to give you more money for the win. I don't know. In my opinion, I think that might be a way to do it where we can make this fight happen and everybody be happy, in my opinion. And again, I'm not Dana and to that level, but that's just what I would think.
It really, and that whole win bonus thing too really depends on the fighter, because some fighters do well with pressure and others don't,
True.
when they're like, man, I have to win to put money, in
True.
the bank so that I can put food on the table. And then when you have that mentality of have to versus want to, what happens to your performance level? Does it go, every fighter's different.
Right.
Some people crack under pressure and some people thrive under pressure. And so I don't know how I feel even about that idea. But
Yeah.
I
But we're
guess
talking
just
about arguably the greatest of all time. So yeah, he has to handle pressure good. No, I'm just kidding.
no, you're right.
Not
That's
not kidding about the arguably greatest of all time, but kidding about the pressure. Obviously, that can definitely be pressure for him. So I agree with you.
I don't know. Sometimes I wish it was just like a flat rate for the fighters, because
I agree. Yeah,
it is
sometimes.
stressful. It is super stressful to think that you put your heart and soul into a training camp, and if in order to win a fight, the stars have to be aligned. It's people think that it's just it's the better fighter that wins, but there's so many things that go into a fight camp. A fight camp. How your year's going, how what's happening in your personal life, what happened fight week, did something happen during the weigh-ins, did something happen after the weigh-ins, did something happen in the fight, and all these things are different variables that determine whether you win or lose. And then you come home with half the pay that you were expecting, and it's just like,
Yeah.
It's so stressful.
Yeah. It's tough. I think the win bonuses are good. But yeah, I think if you show up and you have a good fight and you fight hard, so many times we see people lose fights, but they didn't try to lose. They came out there and they fought their asses off, and some of them fought and won. I had a fighter that just fought Manel Cap. He just fought. Every single website gave him the win, including the UFC, and he lost a split decision. You know what I mean? And he lost his win money for that. And every single, it wasn't even one that said he lost. Like every single news, page said that he won the fight. Every single person at the UFC, everybody thought he won the fight, but he lost his win purse. And it's like, in a situation like that, I agree with you. That's got to be so disheartening because and not counting the people that fought their ass off and took a hell of a beating, and it was a close fight, maybe a split decision. It came down to the wire, and then one person wins their win bonus and one doesn't. So I agree with you. I think that could be changed as well, and that could definitely be beneficial. All right, guys, now for a deadline for you to save 20% and get free shipping at manscaped.com, the official trimmer of the UFC, and now the official trimmer of the Real Quick with Mike Swick podcast, and yours truly. Precision engineered tools for your family jewels, the best in the business, and now you get 20% off by using code QUICK. That is my nickname, not how you use the product. QUICK at checkout, manscaped.com. And Manscaped is now available in Europe, Canada, and Australia. I could go on for days about all their products. They're amazing. They're the best in the business. The Clippers have a flashlight. I mean, come on, give me a break. It's insane. Like, it's a game changer. And I absolutely love the products. That is not me lying at all. I love them. You will love them. Now you can save. Again, use QUICK at manscaped.com and save yourself some money and support the podcast. Miesha Tate is coming back. She's had 2 years off. She seemed like she was ready to retire and leave. She left. Now she seems like she's very ready to come back. I guess my two-part question would be, because she's fighting a girl, I have it here, Marion Renaud, I guess. I don't know much about her, but Miesha said she wants to come back and win the title, win the belt, but she's fighting a girl that's 43 years old on a 4-fight lose streak. My last fight, I wasn't trying to win a belt, and I fought a guy that was 27 years old, and he was on like a win streak, and he was top 10 fighter, and I wasn't even trying to win a belt. I was just trying to come back and have one last fight, and I got this crazy beast of a Goliath fighter who was like just a monster. So my two-part question is, do you think she's really coming back to try to win the belt, and that's her goal, and she's going to be all in it and try to have another career and go for it again? And what do you think she's going to do when she comes back after a 2-year layoff, when she seemed pretty committed to be retired at the time?
So I guess I have to commend her for listening to her mind and her heart at the moment. She lost to Raquel, and you could see it in the fight that she was not in it. It wasn't even a question. when she was getting taken down, there was no fight in her and that just didn't seem like the Miesha that we all know.
Right.
Because the Miesha that we all know was a grinder. She's a dog, she
Yep.
likes to get at it, and it doesn't matter where the fight's going. She will push the pace, or she will just, she'll fight tooth and nail until she gets something. And it just didn't look like the same Miesha in that fight. And so for her to, bow out and retire, I think was just her listening to her heart and understanding how dangerous it can be to step into the octagon when you're not there mentally, for yourself. And, she went off and she had her children. And I think she, when I was pregnant and then I was watching everybody else climb like I was pregnant, and then the UFC opened up, division for women, and that wasn't even, available for me before I was pregnant. And then they opened up a 115 division. At the time I was fighting at 105. So here I am, like a whole new sense of motivation, because, the UFC, the biggest platform for MMA, just opened up division that I could possibly fight in. And I remember fighting for Invicta, but being very distracted because I was fighting for Invicta, but my mind was wanting to fight for the UFC.
Of course, yeah.
And so jumping over to that and having the motivation as a mother versus having the motivation as an individual is a different type of motivation. And I think Miesha had enough time off to miss it.
Yeah.
It's like you don't realize what you have until it's gone.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that a lot, especially nearing towards the end of my career, because I have been fighting for, close to 15 years now. And I know that my time is limited. And sometimes I get so burnt out from training day in and day out. And it's like a grind. And it's like you sacrifice so much time with your friends and your family and your life. And you can definitely get burnt out. When I think about that, I think about the moments when I'm walking out into the octagon and I can hear the cage. And I thought about that when I fought last time. And I usually I zone out Bruce Buffer, I zone out the crowd because I'm trying to focus on the fight. But I'm like, golly, Michelle, this is huge. Like, you're fighting for the biggest organization in the world for MMA. You're the main event for this card. Like, can you just take a moment to embrace this? And so I remember looking at Bruce Buffer, and he's like, Michelle.
Yeah, of course.
And I said it with him, and it was so much fun. And it's just like one of those things that, like, I think, and I'm sure you feel that way sometimes now as a retired fighter when you watch other people fight. You're like, and especially if you're still in the game as a coach, you know what I mean, and you're still staying up and you're still evolving, you probably are thinking, man, I bet you I could hang with this guy or that guy, you know what I mean? And so that's probably exactly what Miesha's thinking. I bet you I could hang with these people. And so she just wants to try it out. And so to your question, I think it's a great move on her part to take a fighter like Marilyn, her opponent.
Renau, yeah.
Yeah, because of her long layoff, and then just kind of test the waters and see where it goes from there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And is she serious about trying to go for the belt? I mean, I think everybody is serious about trying to go for the belt when they say it, because that's just what they hope for. But in 2 years, a lot has happened. The sport has evolved. And it may not look like it from the outside looking in, but once you step into the octagon and it has evolved. Yeah.
Yeah, I was out for 3 years, and when I came back, it was just like 2 times I was out for 3 years. My last fight, and then when I had the injury back in, I can't remember how long that was, but and both times, you're right. When I came back, the sport had evolved 3 years, so you can imagine in 3 years how much the sport evolved. One of the times I fought on Fox, UFC on Fox 4. And it wasn't on Fox. There was no Fox deals. There was no TV deals. And when I showed up for Fox, it was like cameras everywhere, and they were like real cameras. You know, it wasn't like these small cameras. It was like the professional big cameras and all the different theatrics and stuff, and it plays a part. But I agree with you. You know, it is what it is, and like, you know, I said all these different things to get my fight for this last one, but I was one and done. You know, I wanted to just get out there and get this last fight, have fun, promote the gym, and I did. It was fun and it was worth it. So I agree with you. Do you think she's going to do good? Do you think she'll make a good comeback and be able to fight as good as she did, or better? Or do you think just your, I mean, not talking bad or good, just what is your, just if you had to bet on it, what would you say? She's going to do good and she's going to win some fights and have a good run? Or do you think that it might be hard because the sport's evolved and the level's up? Or what do you think?
That's really hard to say.
It's hard to say, yeah. That's a tough
I
one.
think that for, you know, Miesha's style is very emotionally driven. She has a lot of technique behind her with the jiu-jitsu and the wrestling and that kind of grind and a lot of the cage work and stuff. But to me, a lot of her wins come from just her heart, from her just having a lot of heart. And if she's coming back, if she's stepping back to the octagon, that means she has decided in her heart that she's excited about it. And so, you know, I think she'll have a good I think she'll have a good comeback. Is that the right word?
Yeah, no, sure.
I think she'll have a good comeback, especially with this first opponent. As far as anybody else, you know, since she's seen Nunes has evolved like crazy. You know, since she's fought Holly has evolved like crazy.
Yeah.
Like the girls that she fought once are not the same girls that aren't the same girls that she once fought.
Right.
You know.
I agree with you 100%, and I think she's going to have a good comeback for sure against this girl, and I think it'll also tell us. I think that's when we're going to be able to answer the question: is she going to be able to do good? I think she'll show enough in that fight, whether she's really back or not. Moving on real fast, did you hear about this Pilav and the Cage Fury Championship who lost his finger during the fight?
I did. Oh my gosh, I saw the video. It was crazy.
What? So I saw the interview with his trainer. And apparently, what his trainer's saying, or his coach, or whatever, is the guy illegally grabbed the glove, and it wedged the finger down into the glove. So that's what started it. That was like the step number one. His finger's now wedged into the glove. I guess somehow, I don't know how it could happen, but apparently through the gloves, his finger got bent back and wedged into the gloves. Then he threw a punch, and when he threw a punch, because the finger was already crooked and wedged through the glove, it just broke right through and almost severed it completely off. I don't know if it was completely off or if it was down to like a piece of skin, but it was pretty much completely all the way off. And apparently he tried to cover it up and keep fighting, and they saw it because he was missing a finger, and they stopped the fight, and he had to lose the fight, which he's trying to overturn right now because he's saying that the whole reason it started was because of an illegal glove grab. So I guess this kind of brings me to, I mean, there's not much to talk about there. That's just what happened, and it's fucking crazy. We don't have to really talk about that. But the question is, do you think, because I have a mixed opinion on this, and I don't quite agree with the masses, but do you think it's time for new gloves for eye pokes and stuff like that? And not for this situation, obviously this is very rare, but just in general, because we're talking about it, do you think we should change the gloves, or no? Do you like the gloves and we should just be more careful on eye pokes, and it's something that's going to happen, like DC said, no matter what happens?
You know, I think that if somebody can try to come up with something, invent something that is going to be helpful, it doesn't hurt to try, I guess, is my answer. But I think also there has to just be stricter punishment for eye pokes. Like if you know it's that serious, you know, if the percentage of injuries from eye pokes is so much, you know, then maybe you don't even get a warning from an eye poke. Maybe you just automatically get a point deducted, you know, because it's very easy to, you know, train yourself to close your hands. And I think a lot of people, especially people that have big hands, they do this to distract their opponent. But it's also, you know, the difference between this and this is just a little bit, you know. And so I think if the punishment for eye pokes are a lot higher, or maybe it not even be a point taken off, but maybe it be like a financial penalty that you
Right.
have to give to the other opponent. Maybe the fight goes how it goes, but if you poke them in the eye, yeah, you get a warning, but it's $5,000 to your opponent, you know?
I agree with you
And
100%. I think Dana said that as well. He said that that's the best way to deal with it. And here's the thing: when you're sparring, and correct me if I'm wrong, you might be different, but you pile the punches a lot. That's normal. And then in wrestling, you hit the head to push them away. A lot of these eye pokes are because the fighters are coming in, they're kind of rushing in, and the fighters are trying to push their head away and push them back, and then they gouge them in the eyes. It's usually not from a punch. They don't punch with their fingers out. So I think it is very controllable. I think they have a bad habit of pushing the face because it's just an easy thing to do is shove somebody's face away and get them out. And I think that the penalty would be the best way because like some of these gloves I think are very good quality. Like I think they're Onyx by Whitman or something. They're very good quality, but they're designed with an angle. And so I guess the idea is if the fingers are at an angle, they can't stick straight out. And then they can't gouge as much because they're kind of down here. But the question remains when you're grappling, what happens if you can't open your hand all the way to like grab a bicep or grab an ankle or grab a wrist and be able to grapple the same? I think if you take away some flexibility, you're gonna also take away, especially your ground guys, some of their ability to do what they do. So I don't think the answer is the glove change. I think it's more penalty based, like you said, and that's just my opinion.
And I don't know how many times I see people, shadow boxing with their hands open and flicking their hands. It's
Right.
just kind of, they're just bad habits. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And so I always try to make it a habit to shadow box with my hands closed and making sure that the fists are fists for the punches. And then when you go to clinch, it's a clinch. But also, and this is just because I'm a girl, but when I get my nails done and I get the gels, it makes my nails a lot less sharp.
Okay.
Like if I don't have any nail polish on and it's just my straight up nail, and a lot of times, the commission will make the fighters cut their nails before the fight, and when you cut them just like straight like that,
Yep.
and you don't file them down, they're
Sharp.
extra sharp.
Yeah.
And so the nail is what slices your eyes open. The nail is what slices the skin. So maybe making all the fighters get gel, like even if it's a clear coat of gel, and making sure that their nails are cut like 2 or 3 days before the fight, and that it's because it just what it does is it thickens the nail, and then it just kind of like it is kind of like a pad for the actual nail, and that might help a little bit in my opinion.
Yeah. So for the record, it's full manicures and bigger penalties.
Yeah, like I think it's like a clear gel, and what it just because the nail is super sharp if you just cut it like that,
Absolutely.
it'll slice right through you.
And I'll tell
Like
you,
a
people don't realize this, but they do that all the time in the locker room. So many times when the commission comes in, they check your fingers and they check your body, and they see that your toenails and your fingernails are too long, and they get you clippers, and they make you clip them right then and there. And you're in a rush, so you just clip straight across. So you got these two sharp edges on either side. If you're a guy, I'm sure I don't know about girls, but you're definitely not filing the nails down for sure. You're definitely not doing that. So I agree with you on that, and. We'll see. And another thing I want to say, just a quick point, is it's an injury that gets brought up a lot because it's kind of, I don't think it's as serious. I don't think there's many fighters that's had eye gouges that can't continue their careers, like ankle locks and certain things and ACL tears. I don't think it's detrimental as it looks and is at the time. At the time, it looks detrimental, and then they can't continue, and it's very violent looking. But I think they heal quite well. I don't think it's one of the higher injuries on the list. I think it's more rare than like below the belt strike, like a groin strike or other illegal moves that don't have as much of an impact. So I don't think it is as common as people think. I think it's a misconception. I think it stops fights, like the Bilal fight, and I think when it stops a fight, all of a sudden it becomes the biggest injury in the world because of the press, and the fight got stopped. Everybody's disappointed. But I don't think that it happens as often as so many other illegal strikes, in my opinion,
I just think it's scary.
But it is scary, absolutely.
Like, because you could potentially lose your eyesight. Even if you hurt your eye, and then at the moment you still can see. But what happens if you go home and now you have a detached retina? Like,
yep.
I don't know how many fights Bisbee went on with all of his eye injuries, but for sure that's like a lifelong injury that he's gonna have to deal with for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And fighters are so stubborn, they're not gonna not want to fight. But I mean, losing your eyesight for the rest of your life because of one fight is a scary thought. You know what I mean?
What's up, everybody? I am here in Thailand. This is the first time I've ever been here. Been dying to come here for years. Mike Swick, he's one of the big reasons he's been trying to pull me down here. What he built down here, AKA Thailand, is incredible. There's people here from all over the world. You can train mixed martial arts here, jiu-jitsu. They have weightlifting, they have cardio, and obviously they have Muay Thai, boxing, everything. I'm telling you guys, I know everybody wants to go to Thailand because Thailand's so cool, but you can't come to Thailand without coming to AKA Thailand. Come on.
This is kind of outside of MMA slightly, but kind of slightly. But Ben Askren versus Jake Paul. What's your take on that fight? I mean, I know we could talk for days on it. We don't have to get into a big discussion. But what's your take on who do you think is going to win that fight and how that's going to go down? Because it seems to be changing. You know, Jake's putting a lot of footage out where he's looking pretty scary. Ben's being pretty chill and composed, but he's an Olympic level fighter who always manages to win fights and competitions, and he's taken 4-ounce strikes from some of the best of them, Douglas Lima, Robbie Lawler. So what do you think? What's going to happen in this fight?
It's just boxing.
Just boxing, which makes it more scary for Ben. But again, he's been hit with 4-ounce gloves with some of the most dangerous guys in the world and not managed to get knocked out. I mean, a flying knee you can't count. That's gonna cause him to lose a fight in a bigger glove. You know what I mean? A knee when you're running forward and the other guy's running forward, hitting your face. There's not a man in the world that wouldn't have got knocked out by that knee. So he's never been knocked out other than that. You know, he's fought a lot of guys and he's hard to hit. And he has footwork. It's wrestling, but he does have footwork. He knows how to move and get in on people and get out away from people.
2 or 3 minute rounds.
I think it's going to be 3 minutes, I think. So like 3 minutes, I believe.
3 minutes.
So he's not going to get tired, that's for sure. Ben Askren, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. I think that Jake did a good job of, as far as surrounding himself with the right people, getting the right trainers, making sure that he's actually putting in the work. So I give him, hats off for him for doing that. But there really isn't anything that you can substitute for time spent. You know what I mean? Like
True.
Time spent inside the actual octagon, inside the actual cage. And Ben Askren is like a lifelong competitor. As a combat sports
athlete. Yep.
And so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. What do you think? Who do you think is going to win? You're going for Ben, aren't you? It sounds.
I think the whole MMA community is going for Ben because as much as Jake is talking now, can you imagine if he beats an MMA champion? Like it's going to be, and of course he picks one that has the least amount of boxing experience possible, that has the highest accolades in the sport as far as what he's done in other organizations in the Olympics, and then drags him into a boxing match where, he has very little boxing training. I think it's a cowardice move on his part, but smart because he, at the end of the day, he can say he beat an MMA champion if he wins. So of course I'm going for Ben because I'm going for MMA community because I don't want to hear the wrath of Jake. But I will say that if he...
Sports. It's boxing and MMA are completely different sports. It's like soccer versus football. They're absolutely two different sports. You do different stances. You have different cadence. You have different rhythm. You have different, strategy. It's a cage versus a cage versus a ring. So there's so many different things. You really can't do much level changes, which is what Ben is so good at. The level changes and the explosiveness, and in boxing it's a lot of like stand your ground, 6-7 punch combinations and angling off and understanding the ring. So it is a completely different sport. I understand what you're saying as far as it being kind of a cowardice move. So yeah, I'll root for Ben. I wouldn't just say for the MMA community, but just for like a professional athlete community, like Jake Paul, he's a YouTube influencer.
Yeah, he's just starting in this sport or sports combat.
And so, but also like hats off to him for shooting for the moon, because
Yeah.
if you're just starting, you kind of want to get your feet wet a little bit and and build your record and get some ring time. And he's just like, no, we're going for it.
Yeah, I think the stuff he's putting out is scary. He looks good. He has potential for sure if he continues on. But I am going for Ben, and I'm going to pick Ben because I think what you said, that mental fortitude and that ability to find a way to win in every type of sport that he's done, and he's an Olympic level athlete in wrestling, which is like the mental fortitude you have to do to be a good wrestler is so hard, and then do it in the Olympics is a whole nother level. And his conditioning is going to be good. He's not going to quit, and he can dirty box, and I think. He can get in on people. So, I mean, he has the footwork to get in on people because he goes and takes them down all the time. And everyone that fights Ben knows he's going to take him down, and they spend 3 months trying to avoid it, and they can't. They cannot avoid Ben getting in on them every single time. So, key to victory here, I think, is getting in on Jake, making it a dirty, grindy fight for the first couple rounds, hanging on him, going dirty boxing, wearing him out, not taking those long punches from the outside, hoping Jake gets tired. And you think about it, as we've seen this before, but these guys that aren't experienced, it's not their cardio, it's the adrenaline and the panic. They've never been the distance before, so they can train the cardio all they want. They're going to be zapped until they have the experience to dig deep and go on after several fights. Not against YouTubers in the first round. I'm talking like legitimate fights. So he's going to get tired, and he's going to wind down, whether he's in shape or not, just from the adrenaline alone, if that fight goes into rounds 2 and 3. And I think that's where Ben can capitalize. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but I think it could be a situation where Ben is going to outstrike him and beat him up from the dirty boxing, grind him down, and then just after he gets tired, he's just going to overwhelm him with probably not so perfect striking, but it'll be enough, and it's just Jake will just be exhausted and tired of getting, and it may be a stoppage. So that's how I think it could possibly go down. Or Jake Paul lands a crazy hard punch before Ben can get in and knock him out somehow. And one of those two ways is how I think it's going to go down.
Yeah, keep your hands up and close the distance. I think that's a great game plan for Ben. And like you said, the adrenaline jump, I don't think nobody can really anticipate it. It really does kind of, it's like you get a visit from the Sandman. Your arms feel like freaking. Yeah. They feel like heavy old weights I remember feeling that way when I first started fighting and just not understanding, like, why can't they're like, keep your hands up. I'm like, I can't, they're so heavy.
Yeah. And the difference is like people realize like, okay, that, he's got bigger gloves on, but Jake has bigger gloves on. I mean, Ben has bigger gloves on too. And all these guys that he's knocking out in training and all these guys he knocked out that are YouTubers and stuff, they're swinging. They're wildly swinging from the start, keeping their chins open, right? If Ben keeps his hands up, he's got huge gloves too to block himself. I mean, how is he going to get knocked out if he's got these huge boxing gloves covering up his chin and he just goes in and gets close every time? It's not like he's going to be throwing these wild punches and leaving his chin open. He's not going to go box him like that. And I think that's something Jake's not considering. If he does keep his hands up, it's like one of the Muhammad Ali and George Foreman fight. You know what I mean? He just covered up and took George Foreman's best punches for round after round after round after round, and he didn't get knocked out. I think Ben can do it for a round or 2 rounds at least until he gets tired. And then I think that the tide's going to change a little bit. But anyway, one more quick one I want to get into real fast because I think both of these guys. Just your opinion on the fight in general is Cowboy versus Diego. Obviously, they used to train at Jackson. But what do you think about, I mean, obviously it's a dream matchup. I mean, I think the fact that they're going to go to war, I mean, Diego and Cowboy, that's just a dream matchup. But they are older now, and they've taken a lot of damage. And so it's one of those fights where it's like, is it too late for this to be happening? Are you still a fan of the fight happening? Or are they both still in the same fight mode and mentality to fight? And just what's your overall thoughts on that fight happening now and being that last fight for Diego?
I'm still a fan of it happening for sure. They both have the heart to do it, obviously. It sucks because I know both of them. They were teammates at one point, but it's kind of like the Highlander. There can be only one. Yep. So eventually you might end up running into somebody that you're friends with or that you were teammates with or that you are teammates with. And so I feel like Donald has a new sense of motivation, coming off of his last fight, and is really inspired to give it a go. one last time. He's not talking about retirement. He's talking about trying to get that belt again. And I think the difference with that mentality versus this is my retirement fight can be very dangerous. And then also, I don't really have much faith in Diego's new corner, and I hope I'm not disrespecting his new coach in any way. But I just, from the last time I saw him fight out here in Albuquerque, I feel like he kind of took Diego's strengths away, and I'm hoping that Diego has kind of realized what his strengths are and plays to that, because at this point in his career, I think that that's what he has to bank on to win.
I just had Diego on the podcast and a couple of podcasts ago, and it was a 2-hour podcast almost, and the first hour was Diego, and then the second hour was Joshua, and I didn't even ask one question. And I'm not meaning any disrespect, but I feel, in my opinion, Joshua has a lot to say, and he has a lot that he wants to get out, and he wants to build his school of self-awareness, and he wants to build his formula, and he has a lot to say, and he's using that through Diego. So I'm not trying to say what he's doing is right or wrong as far as his techniques and his ideas and all that kind of stuff. But what I am saying is, using Diego as an outlet, the focus should be on Diego only, I think, in my opinion. And I think whoever's around Diego should be focused on Diego solely. It should be all about his fight, all about the strategy, all about him versus what this guy. And if you look at the podcast or if you watch the whole last hour, very little of that was about just Diego at all. It was more about what this guy's doing and what he believes and all these different thoughts that had nothing, political thoughts about the UFC and about all these different things that had nothing to do with this fight. And I just hope that doesn't get in the way, because I want to see a good fight. I want to see Diego show up. I want to see Cowboy show up. And I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. And I agree with you. I think the momentum is going to be on Cowboy's side, because he's not doing it as his last fight. So he's not hanging it up after this, and he's ready to keep going. So we'll see what happens. I'm obviously biased with Diego too. He's my house guest on or house roommate on Tough One, but I think it's going to be a hell of a fight.
Well, so you were roommates with him, and you saw you got to experience the reason why he won. He has that very fiery personality. He comes forward. He's a grinder. He uses the cage and he pushes the pace, and he gets into really, really awesome scrambles on the ground and is able to get into good positions and ground and pound. And he's gotten so far away from that that it just, I don't know what Diego to expect in this fight, but I do know that no matter where the fight goes with Donald, he's good at his stand-up, and if Diego does try to take him on, put him on his back, Donald is amazing. He has really good groundwork, and so I feel like wherever the fight goes, Donald will be able to capitalize on the fight.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. And last question. Sorry for keeping you so long here, but it's so great talking to you, and you have such great opinions. It's so good. We could do this all day. Tough's coming back. Ultimate Fighter season 29. Are you excited to see what the format's going to be and how the show's going to be? 2-part question. So are you excited about it coming back? And then what would you do? I don't know all the details of the show and how it's going to be laid out, but what would you do that hasn't been done in the past? If you were if you were Dana and you could structure the show, what would you do, in your opinion, from your experience, to make the show more entertaining and better, and how it can come back with a blast?
That is a very heavy question.
It's heavy. Yeah.
I am excited. It's a guys show, right? Who's gonna be the coaches?
Oh my God! It just got announced. It just got announced, and I was gonna have. Actually, I had a really big podcast to talk about it with a certain someone, and we missed that part. But we're gonna do another one.
Masvidal? No.
No, not Masvidal, but it just got announced. I cannot believe I can't remember who it is, because it's two good coaches, and I can't believe I can't remember. But it's 135 and 185 are going to be the weight classes. Okay. Wow.
I actually have a teammate that's going out there for that. So I'm rooting for him. So Dan the man. So I'm rooting for him. But I guess how could you make it more the house more intriguing? Gosh, I don't know. I mean, obviously you asked me that question because you're thinking about how what you would do to make it more intriguing, and you were actually on the show yourself. So
I got it here. It's Volkanovski and Brian Ortega.
Okay.
That's what it says as of 2 days ago. So that's as of 2 days ago. Alexander Volkanovski, Brian Ortega set to coach Tough 49 or 29. Sorry. Yeah. So that's interesting. I would have rather seen Usman and Masvidal, but.
Oh yeah, I know for sure. Okay. So what would make it interesting is that if you had the fighters vote who had to fight who.
Right. That's interesting. I think it would also be interesting if they made the coaches fight during the season, just like we did. And they didn't give them like 2 months to prepare after. Like, of course, we fought, our main fight when they fought, 2 months later as well. But I think the coaches should kind of get in there and fight in the final fight of the actual season as well and see how they go through their fight camps and how they also have to deal with the pressure of living in a house or living under surveillance, at least like all the cameras during at least the training part of the program, and kind of giving an inside glimpse of not just the fighters, but giving a glimpse of the actual trainers getting ready for their fights as well. And though it wouldn't be a normal camp by no means, but it would be a fair camp because they'd both be in the same situation. And then they also had to fight on the show. And then, I know that would take away the big finale kind of thing. But if they did the whole show and the finale all together as one, and they had the finale as part of the show, I think that would be kind of cool. And you don't have to wait 2 months afterwards. Yeah.
If I was a coach, I wouldn't want to do that because I would want to be able to, commit my time and my energy and my thoughts to my athletes.
But as a fighter, I didn't want to do it either. And I had to fight my friend on 1 day notice at a different weight class than I've ever fought before. So that's kind of the whole aspect of the show, is that it's sort of like the more kind of drama and different scenarios that are put into there, it makes it more interesting. So that's the reason I said it could be more interesting to the fans if that happened. And it's not just the fighters getting tricked and having to fight on short notice and fight their friends and all this kind of stuff.
Did those fights on the show go on your record?
You know what? They weren't supposed to because they're exhibition and we didn't get paid for the fights. But Sherdog has them on my record, which I hate because I have a loss for my tough fights. And so it makes my record one extra loss. I think it has a note that it was an exhibition or some type of specific exhibition type fight, but it's still on my record, yeah. Unless they moved it down now and took it and put it like where the amateur section is. It was on my actual record, which was kind of weird because, we didn't get paid and it was like a different style. I think it was 2-round fight. Obviously, it was different than a normal UFC fight. It was a lot of things changed. It wasn't like a real fight as far as like a professional fight you train 3 months for, 2 months for, and it was an exhibition. We didn't get paid. So, but yeah, it was kind of on your record, as an exhibition at least.
Yeah. I don't know because I feel like that's what it is though, right? The reason why you're on the show is because you're trying to prove to yourself, to the cast, to the world that you belong on, with the UFC. And so, but the coaches, they've already proven that. And so I just feel like they shouldn't have to go through that.
Well, they wouldn't take an exhibition fight. So what would happen is that they would just have, what I was talking about was they would just move the finale up to the actual show and maybe have a month off or whatever the case where they can do their camp. And then the focus kind of switches from the guys because they never filmed us during our fight camp after the show leading into the finale. I think then for the last part of the show, the focus goes into the coaches in their fight camps getting ready for their fights for maybe a week or two or whatever, and then like a week or two break. So it's like a month for them to prepare, and they're obviously training during the show. Then the finale happens, and then they start airing the show, so it all plays out together week after week, even though there's a space for the coaches to get ready. And then the finale fights, which will be the coaches, and then obviously some of the cast members, would be an actual pro fight. That wouldn't be an exhibition. So I just think it'd be cool to see the coaches train, and I think for the people watching at home, it'd be cool so that maybe like after the show is over and they have the finale fights picked, the cameras then switch to the coaches and their camps for the last month or so, and it focuses on them getting ready for their fights so that people can see that. And then it goes to the finale. Then the finale happens and shows all the professional fights, including the coaches. And then that all runs together during the season. And I think that would be really cool because seeing the fighters train, especially the inexperienced fighters trying to get in the UFC, in a house and under those circumstances isn't like seeing coaches train that are experienced like Ortega and Volkanovski, how professionals of that level train. I think it'd be cool to show that. And I think it'd be cool to show like in real time in a reality setting how those guys actually train and prepare and what their sessions look like. And I think that would be something we could add, that would be cool to add to the show, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do think, and it's cool to show kind of like, you know, they're kind of opposites really, because when you're on the show, how I see it is like, you know, when you're an amateur, you have to be closer to weight because you're fighting every week, and so in the amateurs, in boxing and in MMA, you have to just be ready, you know, at the drop of a dime, because you don't know if opponent's going to fall out, you don't know if you're going to get a last minute call, and you just have to be ready, and that's kind of what your amateur career really is. And so, you know, going into the house, I feel like that's a lot of what it is. Like all these guys, they stay really low and they have to stay closer to the fight weight, and then they don't know who they're fighting. They're put under all this pressure, and then going from that to an actual full camp where you're cutting weight and you have a game plan on one specific opponent, I think would be cool to show the juxtaposition, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. And I want to say that I appreciate you taking the time out. You took a lot of time out for me today. And I want to get your opinions real fast. What do you think about, so you have podcasts where, you know, Fighter and the Kid, you know, podcasts like that where you have like a certain, maybe a fighter and a comedian or two fighters or whatever the case, talking about headlines, talking about the latest things. What do you think about this format where instead of bringing guests on to talk about their fight camps and their fights and the podcast being just about them, but to actually bring different guests on that are fighters or whatever and talk about the headlines? Do you think this is a good format? Did you enjoy the segment, or I don't know, what's your opinion? What's your professional opinion?
I love it. I think it's great. You know, you get the insight of a fighter, professional fighter, outside of their own, you know, their own camp, their own career. The only problem is sometimes I think that when you're a fighter, when you're in it, you know, it's hard to express your opinion about other fighters, because you don't. It's kind of like you don't want to bash their art, their craft, because you know the hard work that it takes to get here or there, and you know that mistakes can happen, you know, in the blink of an eye, and so it's kind of like when you're still active and you're giving your opinion, you sometimes can put your foot in your mouth, and I think a lot of, you know, active fighters, they'd rather just, you know, stay in their lane and do their own thing and fight, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And I think it's cool when it's related and you have some special insight, but I try to make the questions where it's not too political and puts people in a position to have to go against certain people that they know or that it's in the sport in general, because typically, you know, everyone it's some capacity and you don't want to like make them upset. So I try to keep the questions more generalized to like the finger falling off in a fight and Ben Askren and Jake Paul and Miesha coming back, you know, just overall thoughts and stuff like that. So I'm trying. It's a work in progress, but hopefully I did okay and didn't put you on the spot and cause any problems.
No, I think it's great, and I think for me, it's, you know, that's just what it is. We all have our own opinions, and it's okay. And I think, you know, after being in this business for so long, that you should have some tough skin, and if you're a fighter, you should have some tough skin too. And I'm sure all the fighters do, especially after, you know, the punishment that they take from, you know, from fans, from media, from all over, from all ends.
And like I've said this a lot of times before, but no matter what I say about anybody on the podcast, be it this one or the regular podcast, I try not to judge people. You know, I might have opinions or whatever, but I try not to judge them, because you never know what people's been through. You never know what's behind the scenes. You never know, you know, what they've had to go through. And so it's really hard to like blame or cast judgment. So I try to avoid that, even if I do have opinions that might be right or wrong, or, you know, whatever the case. I try not to judge, because again, you don't know people until you know what they've been through, and a lot of people act certain ways because of the ways they've been treated, and you don't know what those situations are, and so you can't, you know, blame them for being programmed to kind of act certain ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but you know, at the end of the day, this is our job. This is what we chose to do, and you know, we're in the limelight, and you know, we're in the entertainment business, and we are in the business where we put our heart on the lines, and people get to watch and judge us for it. So that's what we signed up for.
Well, awesome, and I mean, good luck with everything. Tell the family I said hi, and when you get your podcast going, yo, I've had you on the podcast like 5 times or something. It was like 4 or 5 times. So Don't forget about me. Bring me on. Let me be on your podcast, and then we'll chat it up a little bit more.
We got you.
And I'll definitely have you back on again if you'll do it. I love talking to you, and I wish you the best and good luck in your training. Can't wait to find out who you're fighting in May. I'm going to be rooting for you and excited. Just don't break it in the next 24 hours. Wait at least 36 hours or 48 hours till you break till you break the headline.
Never get to break the news. I never get to break the news.
It always gets leaked out. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time for being on the show. Always a pleasure, and good luck with your fight. Good luck with your training, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.